Nikkei Asia News Roundup
with Jada and Brian. Welcome to the Nikkei Asia News Roundup with your hosts Jada and Brian,
bringing you the latest updates and insights on the dynamic world of Asia and more.
Now let's delve into the headlines. This program is brought to you by Nikkei.
Singapore's financial regulator last Friday signaled that the days of cryptocurrency companies targeting exclusively foreign clients from the city-state were coming to an end as authorities tighten their oversight of such companies, concerned that they may act as conduits for dirty money.
This week, Chinese and U.S. officials said they agreed to a framework to lower tensions after 2 days of trade talks in London, offering scant details but potentially alleviating some pressure on global supply chains.
Pakistan has drastically raised its defense spending in its latest budget, citing heightened security demands following its recent military standoff with India. In contrast, development allocations have been trimmed to meet the International Monetary Fund's conditions for fiscal discipline.
Indonesia, Thailand, and other Southeast Asian nations are rolling out large economic stimulus packages as they attempt to shield their economies from the impact of sweeping U.S. tariffs.
Starbucks on Monday said it is lowering the price of some iced drinks in China by an average of 5 yuan or 70 cents. The move marks the first time Starbucks has officially announced a price reduction in China and comes in contrast to other markets like Japan, where the company announced location-based price hikes earlier this year.
The authorities in Vietnam will use digital technology to deal with the country's largest financial fraud case, in which former property tycoon Trong My Lan was convicted in 2024. Now moving on to the next segment.
Manchester United's antics abroad raise questions about Asia tours. The practice of famous European soccer clubs playing summer exhibition matches in Asia is showing no signs of slowing, as the promise of new revenue streams, new fans, and sponsors outstrip the potential pitfalls that exist in changing markets. Less than 72 hours after finishing the English Premier League season on May 25th, Manchester United was in Kuala Lumpur, losing 1-0 to an ASEAN All-Stars team in front of more than 72,000 fans. Events like these are opportunities to build brands, engage with fans, and gain exposure, noted a Bangkok-based promoter. But not all engagement is positive. Real Madrid's tour of China in 2005 remains infamous, with the China Daily at the time detailing the anger felt over David Beckham missing the game, how Real Madrid had not opened training sessions, and that the club did not serve up an exciting or quality exhibition. 2 decades later, during Manchester United's visit to Malaysia, players made headlines for the wrong reasons. One appeared to push a fan, while another seemingly showed the middle finger to supporters outside his hotel. Beckham was himself involved in a recent controversy. As co-owner of Inter Miami, he was jeered by fans in Hong Kong last year who had bought tickets for an exhibition game during which superstar Lionel Messi stayed on the bench. Fans were given 50% refunds by organizers as long as they agreed not to pursue legal action. Relying on a single player is only one of the traps that promoters fall into, said the Bangkok-based promoter, who noted that fans are bored of European teams coming in and playing against an all-star or national team. He believes that importing a domestic rivalry is more attractive to the Asian market. This theory could be put to the test on July 31st, when the North London derby between rivals Arsenal and Tottenham Hotspur is set to take place in Hong Kong.
Japan finally ignites foreign investor interest after a decade-long governance push. This June marks the 10th anniversary of Japan's adoption of the Corporate Governance Code, which set rules for shareholder rights, disclosures, and more. Improved governance was a pillar of late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's economic policies, known as Abenomics. Although change has only come gradually, foreign investors are finally seeing signs of companies becoming more receptive to re-evaluating their capital allocation strategies, especially following a series of policy initiatives, as well as pressure from the increasing presence of activist investors. In 2023, the Tokyo Stock Exchange requested companies to be more conscious of their capital costs and stock prices, and asked for the disclosure of concrete action plans. Shareholder activism is booming too. In Japan, 108 campaigns were launched in 2024, up 74% compared to 2018, according to Diligent Market Intelligence. Investment momentum is also gaining in Japan as demand for U.S. dollar assets wanes due to the Trump administration's aggressive and at times confusing tariff policies. Further, as confidence in the Chinese economy also wavers, investors are betting on corporate Japan to seize the golden opportunity.
And now for news highlights. Today, we are sharing a couple of Nikkei Asia's most well-read stories in the last few days.
Yeah, well, we have, again, a variety of stories. One, Brian and I were actually behind the scenes talking about a BYD article that relates to kind of one of the stories he already mentioned during the podcast.
Oh, yeah, earlier in the show, I talked about how Starbucks is reducing prices on some drinks in China, and the big deal is that that's the first time they've ever done that. And there's a consumption drop, and there's people being more attentive to what their spending habits are in China. And this story kind of links to that because BYD, the major electric car maker,
Chinese
electric car maker, they're one of the biggest in the world now. They are reducing. What exactly is it? They're reducing their prices?
Cutting their prices. I mean, we've always talked about EV price wars, right?
Yeah.
Especially in China, Japan, even Thailand. But yeah, BYD, which I'm pretty sure it was already considered fairly reasonable price, they are also cutting prices. So
yeah, and the concern is that people are buying fewer cars right now. And that's the interesting part of the story. Well, that is interesting, but there is another interesting part is that fewer car purchases means fewer tire purchases. And that's affecting global rubber prices.
Tires,
Because something I didn't know, 70% of the natural rubber industry worldwide goes to car tires.
Oh, wow.
That's according to the article. That's what it said. And so that's something I didn't really think about, but that could have knock-on effects.
I see. So I think you mentioned consumption, but there's also, I guess that's a common theme because we have other articles about consumption now in Japan, and this concerns inbound tourists.
This is something we've talked about this a few times already because tourism in Japan is surging, and it just keeps on going.
Yeah.
And there's also spending in Japan, but there are shifts in the spending in Japan. And this story is about how tourists are spending less at department stores.
So luxury goods.
Yes.
Which last year we saw kind of a rise in consumption for, handbags, watches, what's considered
people
luxury.
buying high-end rice cookers because they're just like the selection or the quality is highly reputed in Japan, and then they would send them home or they'd buy them and take them with them in their luggage.
Yeah.
That stuff is fascinating, but apparently this is going down this year compared to the previous years.
Yeah, the article compiled data from actual, department store in Japan, and it's seeing a decline in luxury purchases. But on the other hand, it seems like the number of tourists, as you mentioned, are still rising. So, and the number of people visiting the department stores are also actually up. But just the average per person purchase the price is down. And it seems like consumption for other cheaper products or services in Japan is still pretty stable or surging.
That's the angle the story's taking, is that one of the reasons people say that tourism is going up in Japan is not just because there's been campaigns to get people to come to Japan. It's more accessible, and tour companies and hotels are working on it. It's also because of the exchange rate. The yen has weakened significantly in the past 2 years, which means other currencies have more purchasing power.
That's a huge part, yeah.
So it's bringing in tourists. I'm not going to try to sound picky, but It's tourists who can better afford to go to Japan when before they might think it's just too expensive. And those people are people who don't necessarily buy luxury handbags or go to department stores. And this is reflected if you go on YouTube or TikTok. There's a whole genre of videos about people making what they call hauls at places like Uniqlo or Don Quixote. And these are discount stores or fast fashion. They're not high-end luxury department stores. And that's extremely popular. And I think that's some of the shift we're seeing here.
I see. And I'm sure the companies are also kind of, doubling down and trying to get, because there's, you mentioned this, but behind the scenes, but there's a lot of, it seems like they are catering to tourists as well, like especially in Don Quixote, Japan. A lot of Japan merchandise I see.
Yeah, I was saying this before we recorded that last week I was in Shinjuku, which is one of the more popular spots of Tokyo, and they have a very famous Don Quixote store. It's in all the postcards and intros to videos about Tokyo. And I went in, I hadn't been in there in years.
Yeah.
And the entire first floor is just nothing but Japanese-themed tourism items, souvenirs, which makes perfect sense. But my goodness, it was quite a change from, seeing socks and underwear for sale on the first floor.
Yes. And that brings us to the close of today's episode.
We look forward to having you join up again for the next edition of the Nikkei Asia News Roundup.
Stay informed, stay curious. Until next time, I'm Jada.
And I'm Brian. See you again, and take care. This program is brought to you by Nikkei.